The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure of crystal and light that housed the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. 12 species sat in judgment, their forms ranging from clouds of sentient gas to beings made of living metal. At the center of the chamber stood Overseer Vexthal, proud and tall, his 4 crystalline arms gesturing with precise movements as he addressed the assembly. "Honored members of the Galactic Conclave," Vexthal said, his voice resonating through both air and mind. "I present to you the pinnacle of Vryn engineering, the Mentalis Labyrinth, a prison that exists in both physical space and pure consciousness, a maze from which no mind, no matter how advanced, can ever escape." The holographic display above him shimmered to life, showing a fortress moon called Krell 9. Deep within its core, a chamber pulsed with strange energies. The gathered aliens leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused on the presentation. "We have tested it on 17 subjects from 9 different species," Vexthal continued. Each one broke within days. The Keltharan warrior who could memorize entire star charts lost himself in recursive loops. The Drexian philosopher who mastered 12 forms of meditation descended into babbling madness. The labyrinth adapts to any cognitive pattern, any mental strategy. It is perfect. On a transport ship 3 systems away, Corporal Daiwan sat in a holding cell, his wrists bound with energy cuffs. He was a simple-looking man, 28 years old with tired eyes and calloused hands. His uniform marked him as an engineer from the Terran Defense Corps, though the badge had been stripped away. He stared at the wall, not thinking about escape or rescue. Mostly he was thinking about how much he wanted a cup of coffee. The charges against him were ridiculous. Espionage. All because he had been repairing a damaged relay station near the border and accidentally intercepted a conclave transmission. He had reported it immediately, following protocol. But the conclave did not care about protocols or accidents. They cared about making an example. Daiwan, the guard, a hulking creature with too many eyes, spoke through a translator. "Your sister wants to speak with you." The holographic projector flickered and suddenly Heejin's face appeared. His older sister looked exhausted, her diplomatic robes wrinkled from days of endless negotiations. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Daiwan," she said softly. I tried everything." He forced a smile. "I know you did. They are sending you to Krell 9 to something called the Mentalis Labyrinth." Her voice cracked slightly. "I looked it up. No one who goes in comes out sane." Daiwan nodded slowly. He had heard rumors about conclave prisons, about technologies that could break minds without touching bodies. The thought terrified him, but he would not let his sister see that fear. "Maybe I will be the first," he said, trying to sound confident. Heejin shook her head. "This is not fair. You did nothing wrong. Life is not fair, sister. You taught me that." He leaned closer to the projector. "Listen, when I get out of this, remind me to quit the Defense Corps and open that repair shop we always talked about." "When you get out," she repeated, and he could hear her trying to believe it. Back in the council chamber, Vexthal was answering questions from the assembly. "What about humans?" asked a delegate whose body resembled flowing water. "You have not tested this on their species." Vexthal's crystalline face somehow managed to convey contempt. "Humans are barely more advanced than the Keltharan. Their neural structure is simple, primitive. If anything, they will break faster than all the others." "Then this is an opportunity," another voice spoke, this one belonging to a being of pure energy. "Test the labyrinth on a human subject. Prove its effectiveness across all cognitive types." The council murmured agreement. Vexthal bowed his head in acknowledgement. "As it happens, we have a human prisoner awaiting sentence. A soldier caught with classified information, the perfect test subject. No one voted against the proposal. Why would they? The human was already convicted. This way, at least his suffering would serve a scientific purpose." 3 days later, Daiwan stood in the preparation chamber on Krell 9. Medical technicians of various species moved around him, attaching neural interfaces to his head, his spine, his major nerve clusters. The devices looked like silver spiders cold against his skin. He tried not to think about what they would do. Vexthal entered the chamber, his 4 arms folded in a gesture that might have been satisfaction. He circled Daiwan slowly, examining the human as one might examine an interesting specimen. "Do you understand what is about to happen to you?" the Vryn asked. You are going to put me in a maze, Daewon replied. A maze made of thoughts. Not simply thoughts. The labyrinth is built from pure consciousness itself. It reads your neural patterns and creates pathways designed specifically to trap your mind. Every time you think you have found a way forward, the maze will shift. Every solution you imagine will become another dead end. You will walk in circles forever inside your own head until your sanity crumbles. Daewon met the alien's eyes. Sounds unpleasant. It is. Bexthal leaned closer. Your primitive brain will break fastest of all. The labyrinth adapts to thought itself. There is no escape. Not for you. Not for anyone. The technicians finished their work. Daewon was lifted by anti-gravity fields and moved toward a large cylindrical tank filled with glowing fluid. The neural interfaces began to hum, and he felt a strange pulling sensation inside his skull. Your sister fought very hard for you, Bexthal said. She begged the council. She offered treaties, trade agreements, political favors. All useless, of course. You broke our laws. Now you will serve our science. Daewon said nothing. He was too busy trying to control his breathing, trying not to panic as the tank opened and the fluid began to pour in. It was warm, almost comfortable. That somehow made it worse. One last thing, human, Bexthal called out as the fluid reached Daewon's chest. In all our tests, no species has lasted more than 6 days before losing all cognitive function. I estimate you will break in 3. Do try to last longer. The data would be more useful. The fluid covered Daewon's face. He had just enough time to take one last breath before everything went dark. The neural interfaces activated all at once, and his consciousness was ripped away from his body and pulled into somewhere else. Somewhere impossible, somewhere infinite, somewhere that should not exist. In the observation room, screens displayed Daewon's neural activity. The patterns were already beginning to fragment as the labyrinth made contact with his mind. Bexthal watched with scientific interest, making notes on a holographic display. Begin recording, he ordered. Subject is human male, age 28. Baseline cognitive function within normal parameters for his species. Labyrinth insertion complete. Timestamp, hour 0. On the screens, Daewon's brain patterns twisted into strange new shapes. The labyrinth was already at work, building its impossible walls inside his mind. The test had begun. Far away on a diplomatic station, Hyejin sat alone in her quarters. She had exhausted every option, called in every favor. Nothing had worked. Her brother was gone, trapped in a nightmare from which no one ever woke. She put her face in her hands and tried not to cry. In her heart, she knew she would never see Daewon again. Not really. Not the brother she knew. The Mentalis labyrinth did not return people. It only returned broken shells. But she did not know her brother as well as she thought. She did not know that Daewon had never been good at following the rules. She did not know that he had always been the type to look for shortcuts to find the easy way around hard problems, and she definitely did not know that the supposedly perfect labyrinth was about to meet the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, a human who refused to play the game properly. Daewon woke up in his childhood bedroom. That was the first sign something was wrong. The walls were the right color, that faded blue his mother had painted when he was 7. The desk sat in the corner where it always had, covered with old textbooks and broken electronics he used to take apart. Even the smell was right, that mixture of sea air and his mother's cooking drifting up from the kitchen below. But the window was in the wrong place, and the door had 2 handles instead of 1. And when he looked closely at the posters on the wall, the text kept shifting, rearranging itself into patterns that hurt to read. He stood up slowly. He was wearing his old school uniform, not his military clothes. His hands looked younger, smoother. But when he touched his face, he felt the stubble that had been there before. Nothing matched. Nothing made sense. This is the labyrinth, he said aloud, and his voice sounded strange in the quiet room. The moment he spoke those words, the room changed. The wall stretched upward, becoming impossibly tall. The door moved further away with each step he took toward it. The floor beneath his feet became transparent, showing endless depths below. Daewon stopped walking. He closed his eyes and counted to 10, a trick his sister had taught him when he got overwhelmed. When he opened them again, the room had returned to normal. Mostly normal. The window was still in the wrong place. He tried the door. It opened easily, but beyond it was not the hallway of his childhood home. Instead, there was a corridor made of white light, stretching in both directions. Doors lined both sides, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They all looked identical. "Okay," Daewon muttered. "Okay, this is fine. It is just a maze. Mazes have exits." He picked a direction at random and started walking. Behind him, he heard the bedroom door slam shut and disappear. When he looked back, there was only more corridor. He kept walking. After what felt like an hour, though time seemed strange here, he tried opening one of the doors. Behind it was a small room with a puzzle on the floor, glowing symbols that needed to be arranged in the correct pattern. He had always been good at puzzles. It took him 20 minutes to solve it. When he finished, the symbols lit up and a new door appeared at the back of the room. He went through it, feeling a moment of satisfaction. Maybe this would not be so hard after all. The next room had another puzzle. And the next? And the next. By the 7th puzzle room, Daewon realized something. He had solved this exact puzzle before, 2 rooms ago. The symbols were identical. He was going in circles. "No," he said firmly. "I am not doing this." He turned around and went back through the doors he had come from, but the rooms were different now. The puzzles had changed. And when he tried to return to the corridor, he found himself in a different corridor entirely. This one made of dark stone instead of light. This went on for hours. Or days. Time had no meaning here. Every path led to more paths. Every solution created new problems. Daewon tried mapping the maze in his head, but the geography kept shifting. He tried marking the walls, but the marks disappeared. He tried following his instincts, but his instincts led him in circles. Finally, exhausted, he sat down in one of the puzzle rooms and put his head in his hands. "You are trying too hard." Daewon looked up. Standing in the doorway was a creature he did not recognize. It had crystalline skin like Vexthul, but its form was twisted, broken. Pieces of it seemed to be missing, replaced by empty shadows. "Who are you?" Daewon asked. "I was called Thelix," the creature said. Its voice was hollow, echoing. "I was a scientist. I studied dimensional mathematics. I thought I could calculate my way out of the labyrinth. I was wrong. You are another prisoner. I am an echo. What remains after the labyrinth finished consuming me. My body still exists outside, but there is nothing inside it anymore. Just this fragment, trapped here forever, repeating the same patterns until I fade completely." Daewon stood up. "How long have you been here?" "I do not remember. Time is broken in this place." The echo drifted closer, and Daewon could see through parts of it now. "You are the first new mind I have encountered in a while. What species are you?" "Human." "I do not know that species. You look simple, biological. 2 arms, 2 legs. How do you process higher mathematics with such a limited form?" "We use calculators," Daewon said. "Listen, you said I am trying too hard. What did you mean?" The echo of Thelix gestured vaguely at the walls. "The labyrinth feeds on effort. The more you try to solve it, the more complex it becomes. I tried to use mathematics to find the pattern. The labyrinth responded by making the patterns infinite. A warrior from the Keltherin species tried to memorize every turn. The labyrinth gave him infinite turns to memorize." Daewon felt something cold settle in his stomach. "So the more we try to escape, the more impossible escape becomes." "Exactly. It is perfect. The ultimate trap. It uses your own mind against you." The echo began to fade. "I am sorry, human. You seem decent. But there is no way out. There never was." The echo disappeared, leaving Daewon alone in the puzzle room. He stared at the glowing symbols on the floor for a long time, thinking. Over the next period of time he could not measure how long, Daewon encountered more echoes. A Keltherin warrior who had tried to fight his way out, only to find that every enemy he defeated multiplied into 2 more. A Drexian philosopher who had tried to meditate and transcend the labyrinth, only to find her consciousness scattered across infinite versions of herself. All of them had been smarter than him, more advanced, better trained. All of them had failed because they had approached the labyrinth as something to be solved through skill and intelligence. Daewon sat in what had become his resting place, a small room that remained stable longer than others. He thought about his life. He thought about his training. He had never been the smartest engineer in his unit. His scores had been average. His sister was the brilliant one, the one who understood politics and strategy. He had gotten promoted not because he was clever, but because he was practical. When a machine broke, he did not waste time understanding the theory. He found the broken part and fixed it. When regulations got in the way of repairs, he found workarounds. His commanding officer had once written in his evaluation, "Corporal, Daewon gets results, though his methods are unorthodox and occasionally violate 3 or 4 safety protocols." His sister always told him to think things through, to plan carefully, to consider all angles. But Daewon had never been good at that. He was good at seeing a problem and trying the first solution that came to mind. If that did not work, he tried the next thing. He was not elegant. He was not sophisticated. He was stubborn and direct and willing to break things if breaking them got the job done. "That is it," he said suddenly, standing up. "That is what I have been doing wrong." He had been trying to think his way out, trying to be smart about it. But thinking was what the labyrinth wanted. It was a trap designed for minds, for consciousness, for intelligence. Every prisoner had tried to outsmart it, and every prisoner had failed because the labyrinth was specifically designed to be unbeatable through mental effort. Daewon walked to the nearest wall. It looked solid, made of that strange white light. He had assumed it was indestructible because everything in this place seemed indestructible. But had anyone actually tried to break it? He punched the wall. Pain shot through his knuckles. Real pain. The first real sensation he had felt since entering the labyrinth. And where his fist had hit, there was a crack. Tiny, barely visible, but definitely there. Daewon stared at the crack for a long moment. Then he started to laugh. "You are not a puzzle," he said to the labyrinth. "You are a machine, and I know how to break machines." Somewhere far away, in the observation room on Krell 9, an alarm began to sound. Vexthul looked up from his notes, confused. "What is happening?" he demanded. A technician checked the readings. "Neural anchor point 7 is showing stress. That should not be possible. The anchor points are purely physical. They should not be affected by anything happening inside the mental construct. Show me the subject's location." The screens changed, showing Daewon's position within the labyrinth. He was in a standard puzzle room, doing something that made no sense. He was hitting the wall, over and over again, with his bare hands. "What is he doing?" Vexthul whispered. The technician's voice was uncertain. I think he is trying to break through the physical structure." "That is impossible. The labyrinth is built to adapt to any mental strategy. This is just another form of problem solving." "Yes, Overseer, but the algorithms are having trouble categorizing it. Repeated physical trauma to the same point is not a cognitive strategy. It is just hitting things." On the screen, Daewon's hands were bleeding now. But the crack in the wall was getting bigger. Vexthul leaned forward, his crystalline face reflecting confusion and something that might have been concern. "Increase mental pressure," he ordered. "Force him to stop." But in the labyrinth, Daewon was not thinking anymore. He was just acting. And for the first time since entering this nightmare, he felt like he might actually have a chance. The labyrinth tried to stop him. It showed Daewon visions of his mother crying, begging him to rest. It created illusions of his sister Hyejin, telling him there was an easier way, a proper way to escape. It made the walls seem to heal themselves, growing back stronger each time he damaged them. But Daewon had made a decision. He was done playing by the labyrinth's rules. He wrapped his bleeding hands in strips torn from his uniform shirt and kept hitting the wall. When his fists got too damaged, he used his elbows. When those hurt too much, he used his feet. The pain was real, sharp, and honest in a way nothing else in this place had been. Pain meant he was affecting something physical, something actual. "Come on," he muttered, slamming his shoulder against the crack. "Come on, you stupid thing, break." The wall shuddered. The crack spread wider, and beyond it, Day One could see something that did not belong in the maze of light and consciousness. He could see metal, wires, physical components. "There you are," he said. The labyrinth shifted its approach. The room began to fill with water, rising fast. An obvious trap designed to make him panic and think his way to a solution. Instead, Day One took a deep breath and kept working on the crack. When the water reached his chest, he simply held his breath and continued. The water was not real anyway. It was just another mental construct, except he was starting to drown. For a moment, Day One hesitated. Maybe the water was real. Maybe the labyrinth could actually kill him. But then he remembered something his first engineering instructor had told him, back in basic training. Old Master Taesung, who had survived 3 wars and countless repair jobs in hostile environments. "When everything is complicated," the old man had said, "when you cannot tell what is real and what is fake, just pick the simplest action and commit to it. Hesitation kills more people than bad decisions." Day One committed. He ignored the drowning sensation, ignored his lungs burning, and put all his strength into one more strike against the cracked wall. It shattered. The water disappeared instantly, confirming it had been an illusion. Beyond the broken wall was a narrow space filled with machinery. Neural interfaces, quantum processors, crystalline matrices pulsing with light. This was the real structure, the physical foundation that made the mental labyrinth possible. Day One climbed through the hole and found himself in a maintenance corridor. It was small, cramped, clearly not designed for anyone to actually access while the labyrinth was running. Perfect. This meant the Vryn had been so confident in their mental prison that they had not bothered to secure the physical infrastructure. He started following the corridor, looking for more vulnerable points. The machinery hummed around him, and he could feel the labyrinth trying to pull his consciousness back into the mental maze. But now that he understood what was happening, it was easier to resist. He kept his mind focused on simple physical things. The feeling of metal under his feet, the count of his footsteps, old songs his mother used to sing. "1 bottle of beer on the wall, 1 bottle of beer," he sang tunelessly. "Take it down, pass it around, no more bottles of beer on the wall." It was a stupid song, a children's song, but it filled his head with useless noise and made it harder for the labyrinth to grab hold of his thoughts. He found another neural interface cluster and studied it. Even damaged and bleeding, his hands remembered how to work with electronics. These were advanced way beyond human technology, but the basic principles were the same. Power goes in, signal goes out, and somewhere there was a connector he could yank out. "Let us see," he muttered, tracing the cables. "This one looks important." He pulled it free. Somewhere in the labyrinth, a section of rooms collapsed into static. Back in the observation room, Vexthul was no longer calm. He stood with all 4 arms gesturing wildly at the technicians. "This is impossible. The subject should not have access to the physical layer. The mental construct should keep his consciousness contained. His neural patterns are erratic," a technician reported. "He is deliberately filling his mind with random information. Songs, memories, counting numbers. The labyrinth cannot find purchase, and when it does create mental traps, he is ignoring them." On the screens, they watched Day One disconnect another cluster of cables. More rooms went dark. The remaining echoes of previous prisoners began to wake from their loops, their consciousness suddenly less constrained. "He is destroying years of research," Vexthul said. His voice held something humans would recognize as fear. "Stop him. Send security into the maintenance corridors. We cannot, Overseer. Opening the access points while the labyrinth is active could cause a cascade failure. We could lose all the test subjects. We are already losing them. Look." The screens showed the echoes moving through the labyrinth now, following the path Day One had created. The Keltheran warrior echo, the Drexian philosopher, the Vryn scientist. All of them were drawn to the breach like prisoners seeing their first glimpse of light. Inside the maintenance corridor, Day One found what he was looking for. A central hub where dozens of neural interface cables met. It was protected by a locked panel, but the lock was electronic. He had spent 3 years maintaining relay stations. He knew how to bypass electronic locks. "Sorry about this," he said to no one in particular, then jammed a piece of broken metal into the lock mechanism. Sparks flew. The panel opened. The labyrinth made one last desperate attempt. It showed him a perfect vision of freedom, a door right in front of him leading back to his body. All he had to do was step through and leave everything else alone. Quick and easy. Wasn't that what he wanted? Day One looked at the vision. He looked at the central hub. He thought about all the echoes trapped here, the minds that had been shattered for the Conclave's experiments. "No," he said. "I do not think so." He grabbed the largest bundle of cables and pulled. The labyrinth screamed. That was the only way to describe it. A sound that was not a sound that existed purely in the mind. The mental construct began to collapse, walls dissolving, infinite corridors shrinking. The carefully designed cognitive traps fell apart like sandcastles in a wave. Daewon fell to his knees as the neural feedback hit him. For a moment, he thought he might have made a terrible mistake. The pain was overwhelming. But then he felt something else. Other minds pressing close. The echoes no longer scattered and broken but whole again, supporting him, sharing the burden. The Keltharan warrior echo spoke, its voice stronger now. "What you have done, human. We could not have done it. We were trying to fight with our minds. You fought with your hands." "Like a primitive," the Vryn scientist echo added. But there was respect in its voice now, not contempt. "Not primitive," Daewon gasped, struggling to stay conscious. "Just practical." Together, the freed minds pushed through the collapsing labyrinth, following the path Daewon had broken through the physical infrastructure. The maze of light and consciousness shattered like glass, and suddenly they were all standing in that first white corridor. But it was different now, smaller, real. At the end of the corridor was a door, a simple metal door locked from the outside. "That is the way out," the Drexian philosopher Echo said. "But it is sealed. We cannot open it from inside." Daewon walked up to the door. He examined the lock, the hinges, the frame. Standard Conclave security, strong against electronic intrusion or mental manipulation. But the hinges were exposed, and he had a piece of metal from the broken machinery. "Move back," he said. He wedged the metal piece under the hinge pin and struck it with a chunk of broken crystal. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the pin popped free. He did the same to the other two hinges. Then he simply pushed the door. It fell outward with a crash. Beyond it was a chamber full of pods, each one containing a body suspended in glowing fluid. Neural cables ran from the pods to the central machinery. Security alarms were screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. And standing in the doorway, staring in absolute shock, was Overseer Vexthal. For a long moment, nobody moved. Daewon, bleeding and exhausted, stood in the doorway of the impossible prison he had just escaped. The Vryn architect stared at him, all four arms hanging limp, unable to process what he was seeing. "You," Vexthal finally managed to say, "you should still be trapped. The labyrinth is perfect." Daewon looked down at his torn uniform, his bleeding hands, his bare feet. He looked back at the broken door, the shattered machinery, the freed prisoners beginning to wake in their pods. "Your labyrinth was designed for minds that think like yours," he said. His voice was tired but steady. "You built a test you expected people to take. But I never was good at tests. I just find the broken part and hit it until it works." He walked past the stunned architect, heading for the pod that contained his own body. Behind him, the other prisoners were waking up. The echoes had returned to their bodies, and consciousness was returning to eyes that had been empty for too long. "This is impossible," Vexthal whispered. Daewon disconnected the neural cables from his pod and felt his consciousness slam back into his body. The pain was intense, but it was real pain, physical and honest. He gasped, coughed up fluid, and forced his eyes open. "Nothing is impossible," he said, his real voice rough from disuse. "You just made something really difficult. And I do not like difficult. I like simple." The security guards finally arrived, but they stopped at the doorway, unsure what to do. They had been told the labyrinth was escape-proof. They had not been told what to do if someone actually got out. Daewon climbed out of his pod on shaking legs. Around him, other prisoners were doing the same. The Keltharan warrior, the Drexian philosopher, the Vryn scientist, all of them alive, all of them sane, all of them free. And in a diplomatic station 3 systems away, Hyojin's communicator suddenly lit up with an emergency message. She read it 3 times before she believed it. Her brother had done the impossible. He had escaped. The medical bay on Krell 9 had never been designed to handle this many emergency patients at once. 7 former prisoners lay on examination tables, all of them technically healthy but mentally exhausted. Neural specialists from 3 different species moved between them, checking brain patterns and cognitive function. Daewon sat on the edge of his table, refusing to lie down despite the medical staff's protests. His hands were bandaged and his body ached in ways he had never experienced before. But he was whole. He was sane. And he was free. You need to rest, a medical technician said. It was a Keltheran, with scales that shifted colors based on emotion. Right now, those scales showed confusion mixed with respect. What you did should not have been possible. Your neural pathways should be destroyed. I feel fine, Daewon lied. His head hurt like someone had used it as a drum. And every time he closed his eyes, he saw fragments of the labyrinth. But fine was better than broken. Across the room, the Keltheran warrior from the labyrinth was sitting up, speaking with the medical staff. His name was Silrek, and he had been trapped for 3 months. He kept looking over at Daewon with an expression that might have been gratitude, or might have been bewilderment. The Drexian philosopher, a being named Ixtal who resembled a floating collection of crystalline shapes, drifted over to Daewon's table. Human, Ixtal said, her voice like wind chimes. I have spent 40 years studying the nature of consciousness. I learned 17 meditation techniques. I wrote 3 books on transcendental thought. And yet I could not escape what you broke through with your fists. I do not know whether to thank you or feel ashamed. You do not have to feel either, Daewon said. The labyrinth was designed to trap smart people. I just got lucky that I am not that smart. Ixtal made a sound that might have been laughter, false humility. You saw what others could not. That sometimes the direct path is the only path. In the control room, Vexthal sat alone, staring at the deactivated labyrinth controls. His entire life's work was in ruins. The Mentalis Labyrinth, the project that was supposed to prove Vryn's superiority, had been defeated by a human using nothing but brute force and stubborn refusal to engage with its complexity. The door opened. A junior technician entered, the same one who had monitored the systems during Daewon's escape. His name was Kirsten, and he looked nervous. Overseer, Kirsten said quietly, the Conclave Council has requested your presence. They want a full report. Vexthul did not move. What is there to report? The labyrinth failed. I failed. You did not fail, Overseer. The labyrinth performed exactly as designed. It adapted to every cognitive approach. But the human did not use a cognitive approach. He used physical force. That was not a failure of design. It was a limitation we did not anticipate. A limitation. Vexthul's voice was bitter. We built the most sophisticated consciousness trap in galactic history, and it was defeated by someone who hit it with a rock. Technically, he hit it with his hands, and then various pieces of broken machinery. But yes, Kirsten moved closer. Overseer, the Council is not blaming you. They are curious. Humanity has never been seriously studied by the Conclave. We assumed they were too primitive. This incident suggests we were wrong. Wrong. Vexthul stood up, all forearms moving in a gesture of resignation. Yes, we were wrong. I was wrong. Let us go face the Council and admit it. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic station, Hyejin was in frantic communication with Conclave officials. The news of the labyrinth's breach had spread quickly through official channels, though the public did not know yet. She was being told that her brother would be released, that all charges were being reconsidered, that this was a unique situation requiring careful handling. She did not trust any of it. The Conclave did not admit mistakes. They would find a way to spin this to save face. She needed to get to Krell 9 before they made Daewon disappear in some other way. Ambassador Hyejin, a voice spoke through her communicator. It was Elder Kickstar, one of the senior council members. His species resembled living water, his form constantly shifting. We understand your concern for your brother. We assure you he is safe. Safe in your custody is not the same as safe, Hyejin replied coldly. I want him released immediately. There are complexities. He destroyed valuable research equipment. He compromised a high-security facility. These matters require discussion. He was imprisoned unjustly and tortured mentally for days. If anyone should face consequences, it should be the Conclave for building such a cruel device. There was a pause. When Kickstar spoke again, his tone had changed. Ambassador, we do not wish to make an enemy of humanity. Your brother has demonstrated something valuable, something we did not expect. We would like to learn from this incident, not punish it. Learn what exactly? How to build better prisons. How to understand different types of intelligence. The Vryn designed the labyrinth based on Vryn cognitive patterns, then adapted it for other species. But all those species think in similar ways. Complex analytical pattern seeking. Humans, it seems, think differently, more directly, More physically. Hyejin was quiet for a moment. You want to study us, we want to understand you. There is a difference. Your brother will be released. All charges will be dropped. But we would like him to help us understand how he did what he did. Voluntarily, of course, with appropriate compensation. I need to speak with my brother first. Of course. We are arranging transport for you to Krell 9 now. Back in the medical bay, Daewon was approached by Silrek, the Keltheran warrior. He moved with the cautious grace of a predator, but his eyes held genuine warmth. Human Daewon, Silrek said. In Keltheran culture, when someone saves your life, you owe them a debt of honor. I was lost in that maze for months. My mind was breaking. You freed me. If you ever need assistance, you need only ask. Daewon felt embarrassed. I did not do it to be a hero. I was just trying to get out. Motivation does not change outcome. You could have escaped alone. You chose to free the rest of us. Silrek placed a clawed hand on Daewon's shoulder, gentle despite its obvious strength. That makes you worthy of respect. The Vryn scientist who had been trapped in the labyrinth approached as well. His name was Thexel, and unlike Vexthul, he seemed curious rather than bitter. I must ask, Thexel said, when did you realize the labyrinth could be defeated through physical means? Daewon thought about it. When I punched the wall and it hurt. Pain is real. Everything else in the labyrinth was fake, designed to confuse your mind. But pain is simple. It does not lie. Fascinating. So you used physical sensation to anchor yourself to reality, then followed that thread back to the source. Thexel's crystalline face somehow managed to look impressed. Crude but effective. Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. My old instructor used to say that, Daewon said. Master Taesung. He taught basic engineering. He always said, when something breaks, do not waste time understanding why. Just fix it and move on. Practical philosophy, Ixtal observed, drifting closer. Among my people, that would be considered shallow thinking. Yet it saved all our lives. A commotion at the door made everyone turn. Vexthul entered, flanked by guards. The architect looked diminished somehow, his crystalline body less bright than before. He walked directly to Daewon's table and stopped. For a long moment they stared at each other, the being who had built the perfect prison and the human who had broken it. I need to understand, Vexthul said finally. The labyrinth should have stopped you. Every time you tried to destroy it, it should have created mental barriers. Fear, doubt, confusion. How did you overcome them? Daewon shrugged. I did not overcome them. I ignored them. That should not be possible. The neural interface should have made ignoring impossible. Maybe for you, but I have had lots of practice ignoring things. Ignoring fear when I am in a dangerous repair situation. Ignoring pain when I am working in bad conditions. Ignoring doubt when someone tells me something cannot be fixed. He looked at his bandaged hands. You built something that works great against people who think too much. I have never been good at thinking. I am good at doing. Vexthul was quiet. Then slowly he extended one of his 4 hands. It was a gesture of respect in Vryn culture. You have taught me humility, human. I believed the Vryn way of thinking was superior to all others. You have proven that different is not inferior. It is simply different. Daewon hesitated, then shook the offered hand. I did not mean to ruin your life's work. You did not ruin it. You exposed its limitations. That is painful but valuable. Vexthul straightened. The Council wishes to study human cognitive patterns, to understand how you approach problems. I know you have no reason to help us, but I would like to request that you consider it. Not as a prisoner, as a consultant. I will think about it, Daewon said. After I talk to my sister, and after I get some real coffee, the kind humans drink. I have been dreaming about coffee for days. Vexthul made a gesture that might have been a smile. That can be arranged. As the architect left, Kirsten, the junior technician, approached Daewon nervously. Excuse me, human. I monitored your escape. It was remarkable. I have worked with conclave technology for years, but watching you dismantle the labyrinth taught me more about practical engineering than all my training. He paused. If you do agree to work with us, I would like to request assignment to your team. I think I could learn much from your methods. Daewon looked at the young alien, seeing genuine enthusiasm in his expression. You want to learn from someone who fixes things by hitting them? I want to learn from someone who solves impossible problems with simple solutions. Yes. Despite everything, Daewon smiled. Sure, why not? If I'm going to teach anyone, Might as well start with someone who actually wants to learn. A message appeared on the medical bay's main screen. A transport ship carrying Ambassador Hyojin would arrive in 3 hours. Daewon laid back on the examination table finally, closing his eyes. 3 hours? He could rest for 3 hours. Then he would see his sister, and they would figure out what came next. Around him, the freed prisoners were starting to recover. The medical staff were amazed at how intact their minds were, given the time they had spent trapped. It seemed that Daewon's crude method of escape had somehow protected them from the worst of the mental damage. Sometimes, Daewon thought as he drifted toward sleep, the simple way really was the best way. The Labyrinth had been perfect, until it met someone who did not care about perfection. When Hyojin's transport docked at Krell 9, she did not wait for the official escort. She pushed past diplomatic protocols and station security, her credentials flashing on every checkpoint scanner, until she reached the medical bay. The guards tried to stop her. She glared at them with the full force of her diplomatic authority until they stepped aside. She found Daewon sitting on a table, drinking something from a container that smelled terrible. He looked up when she entered and his face broke into a tired smile. "Hey, sister," he said. Hyojin crossed the room in 3 strides and hugged him hard enough to make him wince. "You idiot. You complete idiot. I missed you too." She pulled back, looking him over. Bandaged hands, bruised face, eyes that had seen too much. But alive, sane, whole. How? Long story. Short version is I hit things until they broke. That is not a strategy. That is barely even a plan. It worked, though. Hyojin sat down next to him, suddenly exhausted. The fear and stress of the past days caught up with her all at once. "I thought I lost you. The Mentalis Labyrinth. Everyone said no one escapes it. No one stays sane." "To be fair, I might not be completely sane," Daewon said. "I keep seeing maze walls when I close my eyes. But I am functional. That is better than the alternative." A conclave official entered, a being made of geometric shapes that rotated slowly. "Ambassador Hyojin, we are pleased you have arrived. There are matters to discuss regarding your brother's status." "His status is free and released," Hyojin said flatly. "No charges. No conditions. That was the agreement." "Of course. But there are opportunities we would like to present, compensation for his ordeal, and a proposal for future cooperation." Daewon raised his hand. "Can we do this later? I have been awake for something like 4 days and I need actual food." The official rotated in what might have been agreement. "Tomorrow, we will arrange a formal meeting with the council." It departed, leaving the siblings alone. "They want something from you," Hyojin said. "The conclave never just lets things go." "I know. They want to study how humans think, how I escaped the labyrinth when everyone else failed." Daewon took another drink of the terrible-smelling liquid. It was coffee, Hyojin realized. Where had he gotten coffee on an alien station? Apparently we are interesting now. Interesting is better than primitive. That is what they called us before. Yeah, well, turns out being primitive has advantages sometimes. Over the next day, Daewon rested while Hyojin negotiated with the conclave. The terms were surprisingly favorable. All charges dropped, a formal apology for the wrongful imprisonment, compensation that would make Daewon wealthy by human standards, and an offer, purely voluntary, for him to work as a consultant on conclave projects. "They are scared of us now," Hyojin explained as they reviewed the terms. "Not scared like we are a threat. Scared because they do not understand us. The Mentalis Labyrinth was supposed to be the ultimate proof of conclave superiority. You broke it in 5 days. 4 days, I think. Time was weird in there. The point is you did what all their scientists and warriors and philosophers could not do. That makes humanity unpredictable, and the conclave does not like unpredictable." The formal council meeting took place in a grand chamber that made the previous one look small. All 12 species of the conclave were represented, their leaders seated in a circle around a central platform. Daewon stood on that platform, feeling very small and very human, while Hyojin stood beside him. Elder Kickstar spoke first, his watery form rippling with each word. "Corporal Daewon of Earth, you have accomplished something unprecedented. You have escaped the Mentalis Labyrinth, a facility designed to be inescapable. More than that, you freed 6 other prisoners in the process. The conclave acknowledges error in your imprisonment and offers formal apology." "Thank you," Daewon said simply. He had prepared a longer speech but decided against it. Simple was better. We have questions, another elder spoke. This one was Drexian, similar to Ixtal. Our scientists have studied the records of your escape. We do not understand your methodology. You did not attempt to solve the labyrinth. You destroyed it instead. It was not a puzzle to solve, Day One explained. It was a machine. Machines can be broken, but the labyrinth was designed to prevent exactly that type of thinking. It should have created mental barriers. It tried. I ignored them. Murmurs ran through the council. A Keltharan elder leaned forward. You say you ignored them, as if it were simple, as if fear and doubt and confusion can be dismissed through will alone. Not will. Practice. Daewon thought about how to explain. I work with dangerous equipment. Radiation, high voltage, unstable reactors. If I listened to my fear every time, I would never get anything done. So I learned to put fear in a box, lock it away, and focus on the work. The labyrinth tried to make me afraid. I put that fear in a box too. Remarkable, the Drexian elder said. You have trained yourself to compartmentalize consciousness, to separate emotion from action, I guess. We just call it doing your job. Vexthul stood from his position in the Vryn section. If I may speak, I designed the Mentalist Labyrinth based on Vryn cognitive architecture. We are telepathic, interconnected, holistic in our thinking. We cannot separate emotion from thought. Neither can most of the species in this chamber. But humans, it seems, are different. Fragmented. Divided. What we see as a weakness is actually a strength. Not fragmented, Heejin interjected. Focused. We can choose what to pay attention to and what to ignore. That is not a flaw. It is an adaptation. Another elder, this one resembling living metal, spoke. This raises concerns. If human minds work so differently from ours, what else have we misunderstood about your species? What other assumptions have we made in error? Probably a lot, Daewon said honestly. We are pretty different from you. But different does not mean less. Just different. The council discussed among themselves for several minutes, their various languages creating a strange symphony of sounds. Finally, Elder Kickstar spoke again. The conclave acknowledges that we have underestimated humanity. We assumed technological primitiveness indicated mental primitiveness as well. We were wrong. As reparation and as a gesture of future cooperation, we offer the following. First, full disclosure of the technologies used in the Mentalist Labyrinth, to be shared with Earth's scientific community. Second, an exchange program between conclave researchers and human engineers. Third, a seat at future council discussions regarding cognitive research and prison reform. Heejin's eyes widened. That was far more than she had hoped for. Access to conclave technology alone was worth decades of negotiation. On behalf of Earth, we accept. There is one condition, the Metal Elder said. We request that Corporal Daewon remain here for 1 month, working with our technicians. Not as a prisoner. As a teacher, help us understand the human approach to problem solving. Daewon looked at his sister. She nodded slightly. It was his choice. 1 month, he said. Then I go home. I have a repair shop to open. The council agreed. Over the following weeks, Daewon became an unlikely celebrity on Krell 9. Scientists and engineers from all 12 species came to observe his methods. They watched him approach problems with a directness that seemed almost crude to them. No elaborate planning. No complex analysis. Just identify the issue and fix it. Kirsten became his primary assistant, learning eagerly. The young technician had spent years studying proper conclave procedures, but Daewon's approach was revolutionary to him. You see a broken machine, Kirsten observed one day, and your first thought is, how can I make this work? Not what is the proper procedure for repair, just how do I fix this right now? Right, Daewon said. He was teaching a class on basic troubleshooting. 20 alien engineers sat in the audience taking notes. Because when something is broken, the goal is to make it work again. Everything else is just details. But what about understanding why it broke? A Vryn engineer asked. That is nice to know, but not necessary to fix it. You can figure out the why after the thing is working again. This seems inefficient, another voice said. Maybe, but it is fast. And sometimes fast is more important than efficient. Daewon pulled up a schematic. Look, here's a human cargo ship. It had an engine failure in deep space. The proper repair would take 6 days and require parts they do not have. They need to reach a station in 3 days or they run out of life support. What do you do? The engineers discussed it among themselves. They proposed elegant solutions involving quantum mechanics and field manipulation. All of them would take at least 5 days. What we actually did, Day One said, was bypass the safety limiters, overclock the secondary engine, and vent excess heat directly into space through an improvised radiator made from cargo containers. It was dangerous, inefficient, and violated about 30 regulations. But the crew arrived at the station in 2 days alive. That sounds insane, Kirsten said. It was, but it worked. That is the human way. We find a way that works even if it is not the way it is supposed to work. Silrek, the Keltheran warrior, also spent time with Day One. They became friends despite their differences. One evening, they sat together in the station's observation lounge looking out at the stars. I have been thinking, Silrek said, about what you did in the Labyrinth. My people pride themselves on strategy and tactics. We study warfare as an art, but you won a battle without strategy. You just charged straight at the enemy and broke through. I would not recommend that in an actual war, Day One said. Perhaps not, but there is wisdom in it. Sometimes we outsmart ourselves. We make plans so complex that they fall apart. Your approach is simpler. See the goal. Move toward it. Remove obstacles. Repeat until success. That is basically it, yeah. I want to learn this. The Keltheran military could benefit from human tactics. Would you be willing to visit our homeworld after your time here? As a guest instructor? Day One thought about it. Maybe. Let me get home first, see my family, open that repair shop. Then we can talk about it. The month passed quickly. Day One worked with dozens of engineers, teaching them to think like humans. Not all of them understood. Some could not wrap their minds around the concept of ignoring complexity in favor of simplicity, but others, like Kirsten, embraced it eagerly. On his last day, Vexthul came to see him. The Vryn architect had changed over the month. Less arrogant, more curious. I wanted to thank you, Vexthul said, for showing me my limitations. I spent years believing the Vryn way was the only way, the best way. You proved that assumption false. I did not mean to. I know. That makes it more valuable. You are not trying to prove anything. You are just trying to survive. The architect paused. I am dismantling the Mentalis Labyrinth. It will be converted into a research facility studying different types of cognition. Your contribution will be remembered. Just make sure it is used for good, not for more prisons. I promise. Hye-Jin arrived to escort Day One to the transport ship. As they walked through the station, aliens of various species nodded respectfully. Some even bowed. It was strange being treated like a hero just for escaping a prison. They are building a monument, Hye-Jin said as they boarded the ship. Did they tell you? In the place where the labyrinth chamber used to be. A memorial to you and the other prisoners who survived. That is unnecessary. Maybe, but it means something to them. You changed how they see themselves. How they see intelligence and problem solving. That is worth remembering. The ship departed Krell 9, heading back toward human space. Day One watched the fortress moon shrink in the viewport. He thought about the labyrinth, the echoes of broken minds, the long walk through impossible corridors. He thought about pain and fear and stubborn refusal to give up. You know what the weirdest part is, he said? The Conclave spent years building that labyrinth. All their best scientists, their finest engineers, their most advanced technology. And I beat it by doing what any human mechanic would do. I found the junction box and yanked out the wires. Hye-Jin smiled. Sometimes the best solution is the obvious one. Master Tae-Sung would be proud. He always said, if you can fix it with a hammer, you do not need a computer. They sat in comfortable silence as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. When they arrived at Earth, their parents would be waiting. Their friends. A normal life after an abnormal experience. But Day One knew things had changed. The Conclave was sharing technology. Human engineers would learn alien sciences, and the galaxy had learned that humanity, despite being technologically primitive, brought something valuable to the table. What are you going to do now? Hye-Jin asked. Open that repair shop? Eventually. First, I think I need a vacation. Somewhere with no mazes, no psychic traps, maybe a beach. A beach sounds good. The ship hummed around them, carrying them home. Behind them, the Galactic Conclave was already changing, adapting to include human perspectives in their research and policies. Ahead of them, Earth waited, unaware of how much their standing in the galaxy had shifted. And in his cabin, Daewon closed his eyes and slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. He did not dream of labyrinths. He dreamed of simple things: coffee, sunshine, the sound of waves on a beach. He had escaped the impossible prison. He had taught the galaxy's greatest minds that sometimes the answer to a complex problem was to stop being complex. He had changed the course of human-alien relations through nothing more than stubborn practicality. But what he was most looking forward to was going home and fixing something simple, a broken toaster maybe, or a malfunctioning door, something he could repair with his hands and simple tools, without having to break through layers of psychic interference. The labyrinth had been built to trap minds. It had failed because it met a mind that refused to be trapped, that refused to play by rules it never agreed to follow. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not with advanced weapons or superior technology, but with something more fundamental: the ability to see a wall and decide to walk through it rather than around it, the ability to look at the impossible and say, "Let me try anyway." And that, in the end, was the lesson the Galactic Conclave learned. Intelligence came in many forms. Problem-solving had many approaches, and sometimes the species you underestimated most would teach you the most valuable lessons. The human took a shortcut, and the galaxy would never be the same.